5 bullets were flying straight toward the Alpha King's 70-year-old mother. Hundreds of powerful wolves were in the room. Not one of them moved. Not the warriors. Not the guards. Not the nobles who had sworn to protect her. But a poor waitress did. Without hesitation, Aurora threw herself in front of the elderly woman and took all 5 bullets. Everyone thought she was dead. Even Alpha King Damon Blackwood. But when the doctors revealed something impossible about the mysterious waitress, the Alpha King made a decision that shocked the entire kingdom. Instead of rewarding her with money, instead of giving her a title, he slipped a ring onto her finger and declared she would become his wife. The crowd was stunned. His former Luna was furious. And Aurora herself looked terrified, because the Alpha King had no idea who she really was. And if he discovered the truth, their kingdom would never be the same again. The old woman never saw death approaching. One moment, laughter drifted through the grand ballroom of Blackwood Castle. The next, panic shattered the celebration. Crystal chandeliers illuminated hundreds of guests gathered to honor Queen Mother Margaret Blackwood's 70th birthday. Music echoed across polished marble floors while nobles exchanged smiles and expensive gifts. Everything appeared perfect, at least on the surface. Among the servants moving between tables was a young waitress named Aurora Vale. Unlike the aristocrats surrounding her, she wore no jewels, no title, no family crest, just a simple burgundy uniform and a quiet determination that few ever noticed. For months, she had worked inside the royal estate, serving meals and avoiding attention. That was exactly how she preferred it. Attention brought questions. Questions led to trouble. And trouble had followed Aurora her entire life. Near the center of the hall sat Queen Mother Margaret. Despite her age, dignity radiated from every movement. Guests adored her. Warriors respected her. Even rival packs spoke highly of the Alpha King's mother. As she smiled warmly at a group of visiting nobles, Aurora carried a tray of drinks across the room. Then something felt wrong. At first, she couldn't explain it. A strange sensation crawled across her skin. An instinct. A warning. Aurora slowed her steps. Her eyes moved across the ballroom. Nothing appeared unusual. Musicians continued performing. Servants worked quietly. Guests chatted happily. Yet the feeling remained, growing stronger. Then she noticed him. A man standing near an upper balcony. Dark clothing, unfamiliar face, nervous posture, and one hand hidden beneath his coat. Aurora's heartbeat quickened. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Before she could react, the stranger pulled out a weapon. Time seemed to stop. A deafening crack exploded through the hall. The first bullet raced toward Queen Mother Margaret. Screams erupted instantly. Panic spread like wildfire. Guests ducked beneath tables. Several warriors reached for weapons. But nobody was close enough. Nobody could reach her in time. Then another shot rang out. And another. And another. And another. 5 deadly projectiles hurtled through the air, straight toward the elderly woman. Aurora didn't think. She moved. Her tray crashed onto the floor. Glasses shattered. Ignoring every survival instinct, she launched herself across the room. Margaret turned just as Aurora collided with her. The impact knocked the older woman out of danger. Aurora felt pain explode through her body. Once. Twice. Again. 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 Everything became distant. Sounds blurred together. Faces disappeared. The world tilted sideways. As darkness crept into her vision, she saw frightened guests rushing in every direction. Then she saw him. Alpha King Damon Blackwood. The ruler had entered through the massive doors moments after the attack began. His golden eyes searched the chaos, then found his mother. Alive. A wave of relief crossed his face, only for horror to replace it, because lying in a pool of blood beside Margaret was a young waitress. A stranger. A servant. Someone who had nearly given her life to save his family. Aurora. Margaret's voice trembled. Damon rushed forward. His powerful frame pushed through the crowd. He dropped to one knee beside the wounded woman. Blood stained her uniform. Her breathing was shallow. Her skin had turned pale. The physicians arrived seconds later. Orders flew across the ballroom. Guards pursued the attackers. Doors slammed shut. Witnesses were questioned. But Damon barely heard any of it. His attention remained fixed on the unconscious waitress. Who was she? Why had she done this? Hundreds of people had been present. Only one had acted. Only one had stepped between danger and certain death. As the healers prepared to move Aurora, something unexpected happened. Margaret grabbed Damon's arm. Tears filled her eyes. You owe that girl everything. Damon looked down at Aurora. For reasons he couldn't understand, the sight of her stirred something unfamiliar inside him. Respect, gratitude, curiosity, perhaps even guilt. Because while his guards had failed, a waitress had succeeded. The physicians carried Aurora toward the castle infirmary. Margaret watched anxiously. Damon followed silently. Neither noticed the shadow observing them from the balcony above. A shadow that hadn't fled with the assassins. A shadow that smiled as Aurora disappeared down the corridor. Because the attack had never been about Margaret. The elderly woman had simply been bait. The real target had always been Aurora. And whoever wanted her dead was already preparing a second attempt. 3 days passed. Inside the royal infirmary, silence ruled the chamber. Heavy curtains blocked most of the sunlight. Medicinal herbs filled the air with a sharp scent. Physicians came and went. Healers whispered among themselves. Nobody understood what they were witnessing. Not even the kingdom's most experienced medical experts. Aurora Vale should have died. That was the conclusion every physician reached after examining her injuries. 5 bullets. Severe blood loss. Damaged organs. Broken ribs. No ordinary person could survive such trauma. Yet somehow she remained alive. Not only alive, recovering. At a pace that defied reason. One elderly healer stared at Aurora's medical chart before shaking his head. This is impossible. His assistant frowned. What is? The old healer pointed toward the notes. Her wounds are closing. The younger woman blinked. What? Faster than they should. Confusion spread across the room. Nobody spoke. Nobody had an explanation. Meanwhile, several floors above, Alpha King Damon Blackwood stood inside his private study. Rain tapped against the windows. A fire crackled nearby. Yet his attention remained fixed on a report resting upon his desk. The investigation into the assassination attempt had produced few answers. The attackers were dead. Every one of them. Before guards could capture anyone alive, the assassins had taken poison. A professional operation. Carefully planned. Carefully executed. Which meant someone powerful wanted evidence erased. Damon hated mysteries. Especially those involving his family. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Enter. His beta stepped inside. Your Majesty. Damon looked up. What is it? The waitress. Instantly, his focus sharpened. What about her? The beta hesitated, then handed over another report. Damon scanned the page. His expression darkened. Are these findings accurate? We checked twice. Silence followed. Because according to the medical records, Aurora's body was healing far beyond normal wolf standards. Even elite warriors required weeks to recover from serious injuries. Aurora had improved dramatically within days. How? The question lingered. And questions demanded answers. Without another word, Damon headed toward the infirmary. A short time later, he entered Aurora's room. For a moment, he simply observed her. The young woman looked peaceful. Fragile. Nothing about her appearance suggested extraordinary abilities. No visible power. No noble bloodline. No reason to attract attention. Yet something about her felt different, as though she carried secrets beneath the surface. Before Damon could think further, Aurora stirred. A small movement. Then another. Slowly, silver-gray eyes opened. Awareness returned gradually. Confusion crossed her face. Then discomfort. Then alarm. She attempted to sit upright. Pain immediately stopped her. "Don't." The deep voice startled her. Aurora turned. And froze. The Alpha King stood only a few feet away. Golden eyes watched her carefully. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Aurora broke the silence. "Your mother." Damon raised an eyebrow. "What about her? Is she safe?" A strange expression crossed his face. Of all the questions she could have asked, that was the first. Yes. Relief immediately appeared on Aurora's features. Only then did she relax slightly. Damon noticed. "Interesting. Very interesting. You nearly died." Aurora glanced toward her bandages. "Looks like I didn't." A faint smile appeared. The response surprised him. Most individuals would be terrified. This woman joked about death. Damon pulled a chair closer. "I have questions." Aurora's stomach tightened. "Danger." Something in his tone carried danger. Not physical danger. The kind hidden inside conversations. The kind that uncovered truths. "What kind of questions?" "Simple ones." His gaze never left her face. "Who are you?" Aurora forced calmness. "A waitress." "No." His answer came immediately. "A profession is not an identity." A warning bell sounded inside her mind. This conversation was moving somewhere she didn't want it to go. Damon continued. "Where did you learn combat awareness?" She blinked. "What?" "You reacted before trained guards." Silence. Aurora searched for a response. Nothing convincing came to mind. Because he was right. Normal waitresses didn't detect assassins seconds before an attack. Normal waitresses didn't dive into gunfire. Normal waitresses certainly didn't survive 5 bullets. The problem was, explaining any of that would reveal too much. Before she could answer, the chamber door burst open. A woman entered without permission. Elegant, beautiful, furious. Lady Vanessa, the former Luna candidate. The woman many expected Damon to marry. Her icy blue eyes landed on Aurora instantly. Disgust flashed across her face. Then something darker. Recognition. Aurora felt her blood run cold. Because she recognized that expression. Someone who had seen a ghost. Vanessa stepped forward slowly. "You." The single word carried years of buried hatred. Damon frowned. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa ignored him. Her gaze remained fixed on Aurora. Almost accusing. Almost triumphant. As though she had finally discovered something important. Aurora's pulse quickened. How? How could this woman know her? They had never met. At least. Not that Aurora remembered. Then Vanessa smiled. And that smile terrified Aurora of more than open anger. Because it looked like someone who possessed a dangerous secret. "Now I remember." Damon rose from his chair. "Remember what?" Vanessa turned toward him. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Then she spoke words that changed everything. "That girl isn't who she claims to be." The room became completely silent. Aurora's heart hammered against her ribs. Because for the first time in years, someone was getting dangerously close to the truth. And outside the infirmary window, hidden among the shadows, a cloaked figure watched the room from afar. Watching, waiting, listening. A silver dagger rested in the stranger's hand. One engraved with an ancient royal symbol. The exact same symbol hidden on a necklace Aurora had worn since childhood. The assassin smiled beneath the hood. Because if Vanessa remembered who Aurora really was, then the hunt could finally begin. Word of the assassination attempt had already spread through every corridor, every chamber, every guarded gate. Nobles gathered in tense clusters. Servants moved with lowered heads. Warriors stood at attention, sharper than usual, as though expecting another attack at any moment. Inside the Grand Hall, Queen Mother Margaret Blackwood had called for an emergency assembly. Her presence alone commanded obedience. Despite her age, she sat upright on the elevated throne platform, silver hair pinned elegantly, expression steady but unshakable. Beside her stood Alpha King Daemon Blackwood, cold, controlled, unmoving, and at the center of every whispered conversation, Aurora Vale, the waitress who had stopped death itself. She stood near the lower steps of the hall, still recovering, bandages hidden beneath a modest dark gown provided by palace attendants. Every gaze in the room pressed into her skin. Some are curious, some are grateful, most suspicious. Lady Vanessa stood among the nobles, arms folded, watching closely. Her expression carried no warmth, only calculation. Margaret raised a hand. Instant silence. "I will not repeat what happened 3 nights ago," she said calmly, "but I will acknowledge it." Her gaze shifted toward Aurora. "That young woman saved my life." A wave of murmurs spread instantly. Some were shocked. Some are disbelieving. Others were resentful. Margaret continued. "In this kingdom, bravery is not measured by birthright." Her voice sharpened. "It is measured by action." Daemon observed quietly. He had not yet spoken publicly about Aurora's identity. Not once. Even now, uncertainty lingered inside him. She was a contradiction he could not solve. Margaret rose slowly, then descended the steps. Every noble instinctively bowed. She stopped in front of Aurora. For a moment, the hall felt smaller, closer, heavier. "You risked everything for me," Margaret said softly. Aurora lowered her gaze. "I reacted." Margaret smiled faintly. "That is not a reaction. That is courage." Then she turned toward Daemon. The air shifted instantly, because everyone understood what came next. Reward, recognition, perhaps land, perhaps gold, perhaps a noble title. The court waited. Aurora did not. She looked uncomfortable under the attention, as though she belonged nowhere in this room. Daemon stepped forward. His boots echoed against marble. Every movement is deliberate. Every eye followed him. Even Vanessa straightened slightly, anticipation sharpening her features. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The Alpha King would dismiss the girl, return things to order, end the disruption. Daemon stopped in front of Aurora. Silence swallowed the hall. Then he spoke. "I have decided." Only those 4 words. Yet they carried enough weight to silence breath itself. Margaret studied him carefully. Vanessa's lips curved faintly. Aurora's pulse tightened. Daemon reached into his coat. Slowly, deliberately. The movement drew every gaze in the room. Then he removed something small. Metallic. Gold. A ring. Gasps erupted instantly. Whispers exploded across the hall. Margaret's eyes widened slightly. Even Vanessa froze. Aurora took a small step back. "No," she whispered without realizing. Daemon ignored the reaction. His focus remained fixed on her. "You acted without hesitation," he said. "You protected my bloodline." A pause. "Now you will be bound to it." Shock rippled again through the room. Margaret did not interfere, because she understood his tone. This was not a suggestion. It was a decree. Daemon lifted Aurora's hand. She resisted instinctively. "Wait, I don't." "You already crossed the line between servant and survivor," he cut in. "Now there is no returning." The ring slid onto her finger. Cold metal against trembling skin. A collective gasp filled the hall. Vanessa's composure cracked instantly. Impossible, she snapped. That girl cannot. Damon turned his head slightly. One look. Enough to silence her completely. Aurora stared at the ring. Her breathing became uneven. This was not a reward. This felt like a capture. Like fate closing around her from every side. Margaret watched quietly, unreadable. Then Damon spoke again. From this moment forward, he said, loud enough for all to hear, she is under my protection. A finality settled over the hall. No debate. No reversal. Only consequence. Aurora lifted her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze. What does this make me? She asked quietly. Damon did not answer immediately. Something unreadable flickered across his expression. Then, in a voice lower than before, my responsibility. A silence followed that was heavier than the attack itself. Outside the castle walls, thunder rolled across distant mountains, and somewhere beyond the kingdom's borders, a second force began to move. Because the Alpha King's decision had just rewritten every balance of power, and Aurora Vale was no longer invisible. She had become a target again. By midday, the castle no longer felt like a place of safety. Whispers traveled faster than footsteps. News of the ring spread across every noble corridor, every servant passage, every guarded tower. Aurora Vale was no longer just a survivor of an assassination attempt. She had become the center of court obsession and division. Inside the Eastern Gallery, aristocrats gathered beneath painted ceilings, their voices low but cutting. She was a waitress yesterday. Now she stands beside the Alpha King? Absurd. She doesn't belong here. Laughter followed, sharp and dismissive. Aurora stood alone near a marble column, unaware of how many eyes tracked her every movement. The ring on her finger felt heavier than metal. It felt like judgment, like ownership, like a question she could not answer. Across the hall, Lady Vanessa observed quietly. Her posture remained elegant. Her expression remained composed. But beneath that calm surface, resentment burned steadily. She stepped forward. Graceful. Intentional. The crowd noticed instantly. Silence shifted. Attention redirected. Vanessa stopped a few steps from Aurora. I suppose congratulations are expected, she said softly. The tone carried sweetness. Yet nothing about it was kind. Aurora said nothing. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. You must feel honored, she continued, to be chosen so quickly. A faint smile appeared. But then again, desperation makes people accept anything. A ripple of amusement moved through nearby nobles. Aurora's fingers tightened slightly. She did not respond. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice. You should be careful, she whispered. Men like the Alpha King don't rescue women like you. They replace them. Aurora finally met her gaze. Calm. Unshaken. That sounds like experience talking. The response landed cleanly. A few nearby servants stifled reactions. Vanessa's smile vanished for half a second, then returned sharper. You think you're untouchable because of a ring? Aurora glanced down briefly. I think I'm alive because I chose to be. That silence hit harder than insults. For a moment, Vanessa said nothing. Then she turned slightly toward the gathered nobles. Her voice rose just enough to carry. This is the woman now tied to our Alpha King. Gasps followed. Eyes widened. Judgment intensified. She has no lineage. No education. No standing. Vanessa's gaze sharpened. And yet she sits at the edge of power. The atmosphere shifted. From curiosity to hostility. Aurora felt it immediately. The room pressing inward. Unspoken rejection forming into something heavier. She stepped back slightly. But voices followed. She doesn't belong here. This is a mistake. Alpha King Damon has been deceived. Aurora's chest tightened. Then a presence cut through the noise. Cold. Commanding. Absolute. Damon Blackwood entered the gallery. Instant silence fell. Even Vanessa straightened. Every noble lowered their gaze. Except Aurora. She didn't move. Damon's eyes scanned the room once. Then settled. On her. On the ring. On the tension surrounding her. He understood everything without needing explanation. Slowly, he walked forward. Each step recalibrated the room's atmosphere. Vanessa watched carefully, expecting her to return. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Damon would correct the situation. Restore hierarchy. Remove the disturbance. He stopped beside Aurora. Then spoke. I heard enough. His voice was quiet. Yet it silenced thought itself. Vanessa smiled faintly. Finally. Damon continued. Every word spoken here. Pause. Was heard. Nobles shifted uneasily. He turned slightly. Let me clarify something. Another pause. The ring was not given out of sentiment. Eyes tightened across the hall. It was given as a declaration. Vanessa's expression stiffened. Damon's gaze returned to Aurora. She is under my authority. A beat. And under my protection. The air hardened. But understand this, he added. His tone lowered. If anyone in this castle believes she is beneath them, a pause heavy enough to fracture confidence. They are mistaken about their place, not hers. The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Aurora remained still, absorbing every word. But something inside her shifted. Not comfort. Not relief. Something more complicated. Danger wrapped in elevation. Protection that felt like exposure. Damon turned slightly toward Vanessa. His expression is unreadable. Enough games. 3 words. Final. Vanessa's face paled subtly. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Damon extended his hand toward Aurora. Come. The command was simple. Aurora hesitated. Every instinct warned her. Yet every path forward had already closed behind her. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The moment contact was made, the ring on her finger emitted a faint, almost imperceptible pulse. Neither of them noticed. Not yet. As they left the gallery, unseen eyes followed them from the shadows. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. Because somewhere within the castle, a sealed archive had just been opened. And inside it, a name identical to Aurora Vale was already written in records that should not exist. Night settled over Blackwood Castle like a heavy veil. Torches burned along the stone corridors, casting long trembling shadows against ancient walls. Somewhere deep within the restricted wing, silence reigned over a place few were permitted to enter. The Royal Archive. Dust clung to towering shelves filled with sealed records, forgotten treaties, and bloodline registries dating back centuries. A lone figure moved between the rows. Cloaked. Careful. Intentional. Elder Rowan. His fingers brushed along aged parchment until he stopped at a section marked with a black crest. Restricted lineage files. Not meant for public eyes. Not meant for any living soul. He unlocked a hidden cabinet and pulled out a single leather-bound ledger. Its pages trembled slightly as he opened it. Then he froze. A name, written in faded ink. Aurora Vale. Rowan's expression tightened. That can't be. He turned pages faster. Searching. Cross-referencing. Then he found it. A symbol drawn beside her name. A crescent wolf wrapped in fractured gold. His breath slowed. Because that mark belonged to a bloodline erased from official history. The Obsidian Leakin dynasty. Wiped out under mysterious circumstances decades ago. Or so the kingdom believed. Rowan closed the ledger slowly. Then whispered to himself. So she survived. Elsewhere in the castle, Aurora stood alone in her assigned chamber. A room too large. Too quiet. Too unfamiliar. The ring on her finger reflected faint candlelight as she sat near the window, staring at the distant forest beyond the palace walls. Sleep refused to come. Not after everything. Not after the way Damon looked at her. Not after the way people now looked away from her, as if she no longer belonged to the world she once understood. A soft knock broke the silence. Aurora tensed. Enter. The door opened. Margaret Blackwood stepped inside. Her presence softened the room instantly. Still awake, the Queen Mother observed gently. Aurora stood quickly. You shouldn't come here alone. Margaret smiled faintly. I have survived worse than worried courtiers. She approached, gaze settling on Aurora's hand. On the ring. You are not comfortable with it, she said. It was not a question. Aurora hesitated. It feels heavy. Margaret nodded slowly. Power always does. A pause. Then Margaret studied her more closely. Tell me something. Aurora looked up. Do you remember your parents? The question struck deeper than expected. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Aurora's face. I was told they died when I was very young. Margaret didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached into her sleeve and produced a small velvet pouch. From it, she revealed an old pendant. Silver. Worn. Marked with the same crescent wolf symbol Rowan had just discovered. Aurora stared at it. Her breath caught slightly. I've seen this before, she whispered. Margaret's expression sharpened. Where? Aurora struggled. Fragments surfaced. Faint memories. A burning village. A voice calling her name. A woman pushing her into darkness. Then nothing. Pain flickered across her mind. I don't know, she admitted quietly. Margaret watched her carefully, as if weighing something dangerous. Then she spoke. There are stories in this kingdom that were never meant to survive. Aurora frowned slightly. What stories? Margaret's voice lowered. About a bloodline that could awaken power older than the Alpha Council itself. Silence filled the room. Aurora's fingers tightened slightly around the pendant. That sounds like a legend. Margaret stepped closer. Most legends are just truths buried too deep. A distant thunder rolled outside. The window trembled faintly. And, for a brief moment, Aurora felt something stir beneath her skin. Not pain. Not fear. Something else. Recognition. As if the pendant was responding to her presence. She stepped back slightly. What is happening to me? Margaret did not answer immediately, because she wasn't certain anymore. Instead, she said softly, if Elder Rowan finds what he is searching for. Her eyes darkened. Your life will no longer be something even the Alpha King can protect. A heavy silence followed. Then, from somewhere deep within the castle walls, a distant alarm bell rang once. Low, urgent, unmistakable. Margaret turned sharply toward the door. That wasn't scheduled. Aurora felt it too. Something had shifted. Somewhere within Blackwood Castle, a sealed chamber had been opened. And whatever lay inside it, I was now awake. The alarm bell faded, yet its echo lingered inside every corridor of Blackwood Castle. Doors were locked, guards repositioned. Whispers turned sharper, heavier, more urgent. Something had been disturbed in the royal archive. Something ancient. Something forbidden. And immediately, suspicion needed a target. Aurora Vale became the easiest answer. Inside the council chamber, tension pressed against stone walls like a physical force. Elder Rowan stood at the center of gathered nobles. His expression was controlled, voice steady, eyes deliberate. We have confirmed irregular activity within restricted records. A murmur spread. Rowan continued. And the only individual unaccounted for during that period. His gaze shifted slightly. Was the waitress now under royal protection? Instant reaction. Shock. Doubt. Whispers multiplied. Vanessa sat among the upper delegation. Lips curved faintly. Not surprising. Expectation. Across the room, Damon Blackwood remained silent. Still. Unreadable. Margaret's presence beside him grounded the atmosphere. Yet even she did not interrupt immediately. Rowan placed a sealed document onto the table. It appears, he added carefully, that Aurora Vale's file was accessed. A pause. Someone attempted to verify her origin. Gasps followed. A noble stepped forward. Why would she need verification? Another voice cut in. Unless she is hiding something. The room tilted toward accusation. Damon's golden gaze shifted slightly downward. Rowan seized the momentum. We also discovered a missing pendant from the royal evidence vault. That detail changed the air instantly. Margaret stiffened subtly. Vanessa leaned forward. And Rowan's tone deepened. It matches symbols associated with a lineage erased from historical record. Silence dropped. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Dangerous. All eyes began drifting toward Aurora, who had been summoned moments earlier. She entered the chamber escorted by 2 guards. Confusion lingered on her face. Then she felt it. The shift. The hostility. The silent verdict formed before any judgment was spoken. Damon's eyes met hers briefly. No reassurance. Only assessment. Rowan stepped forward. Aurora Vale, he announced, you are hereby questioned regarding unauthorized access to royal archives. Aurora blinked. What? Vanessa rose slowly. Her voice carried perfectly. You were seen near restricted corridors last night. That was not true. Aurora knew it instantly. Yet lies rarely require proof in rooms like this. Only repetition. Rowan continued. Witness testimony places you within proximity of sealed records. Aurora shook her head. I was with Queen Mother Margaret. Margaret started to respond. But hesitation stopped her. A fraction of doubt. Small. Enough. Vanessa noticed immediately. That is not an alibi, she said smoothly. It is convenient. The nobles reacted. Momentum shifted further. Damon finally spoke. One accusation is not evidence. Rowan inclined his head. Agreed. Then he added, but combined with missing artifacts and recent identity inconsistencies. A pause. It becomes a pattern. Aurora's breathing tightened. This is wrong, she said quietly. No one responded. Because doubt had already replaced logic. Margaret stepped forward. I was with her earlier, she stated firmly. Relief flickered across Aurora's expression. But Rowan countered instantly. Earlier does not account for the time of breach. The argument tightened again. Vanessa's gaze remained fixed on Aurora. Cold. Satisfied. Damon finally rose. The room fell silent immediately. His presence erased every competing voice. He walked slowly toward the center. Every step is deliberate. Measured. Then he stopped in front of Aurora. You understand the severity of what is being suggested, he said quietly. Aurora met his gaze. I understand I'm being blamed for something I didn't do. A pause. Damon studied her carefully. Something unreadable moved behind his eyes. Then he turned slightly toward Rowan. Evidence, he demanded. Rowan hesitated. Then produced a small fragment. Burned cloth. Marked with faint residue. It was recovered near the archive entrance. Vanessa stepped closer. And it matches her uniform. A ripple spread through the chamber. Aurora looked down. Recognition struck immediately. That wasn't hers. Someone had planted it. Her hands tightened. You are setting me up, she said clearly. No emotion. No panic. Just certainty. That alone made the room grow quieter. Because certainty can be dangerous. Even when spoken by the accused. Damon watched her for a long moment. Then he made a decision. One night, he said finally. Heads turned. What? Rowan questioned. Damon's voice remained firm. She remains within the castle under supervision. A pause. If no further evidence is produced by dawn. His gaze shifted briefly toward Rowan. This matter is closed. Vanessa's expression tightened instantly. Rowan bowed slightly, though dissatisfaction lingered in his eyes. Aurora exhaled slowly. Not relief. Delay. Only delay. As guards escorted her out, she glanced back once. Damon did not follow. Margaret looked conflicted. Vanessa watched with quiet triumph. And somewhere unseen within the castle's lower corridors, a hooded figure extinguished a candle. The plan had worked exactly as intended. The girl was now isolated, distrusted, cornered. And when people are cornered, they finally reveal what they are. Night brought no comfort to Blackwood Castle. Instead, it deepened suspicion. Corridors once filled with ceremony now felt like watchful tunnels. Every shadow seemed intentional. Every silence felt arranged. Aurora Vale remained under strict supervision inside a sealed chamber on the west wing. 2 guards stood outside her door. Unmoving, unblinking, unfriendly. Inside, she sat on the edge of a narrow bed, staring at her reflection in a polished silver tray. Fatigue lingered beneath her eyes. Not from wounds alone. From accusation. From disbelief. From the strange realization that safety could disappear faster than danger. The ring on her finger caught faint torchlight. She turned it slightly. It felt colder tonight, as if reacting to something unseen. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She didn't respond immediately. Then, enter. The door opened. Not guards. Not servants. Margaret Blackwood stepped inside. Alone. Aurora stood quickly. You shouldn't come here, she said softly. Margaret closed the door behind her. I have never allowed fear to dictate where I walk. A faint pause. Then she studied Aurora carefully. They are preparing a formal inquiry. Aurora lowered her gaze. I already know. Margaret moved closer. And yet you are not afraid. It was not a question. Aurora exhaled slowly. I am tired of being afraid. Silence settled between them. Then Margaret spoke again. Do you trust Damon? The question landed heavier than expected. Aurora hesitated. I don't know him well enough to answer that. Margaret nodded faintly. Wise response. A pause. But incomplete. Aurora frowned slightly. What do you mean? Margaret reached into her sleeve once more, this time producing a folded parchment sealed with wax. I found this in the royal records vault before the alarm was triggered. She placed it on the table. Aurora didn't touch it. Open it, Margaret urged. Slowly, Aurora broke the seal. The parchment contained a sketch. A detailed illustration of a crescent-marked crest surrounded by fractured gold lines. Her breath caught instantly. I've seen this before, she whispered. Margaret observed her reaction carefully. Where? Aurora struggled again. Fragments returned. A voice. A burning sky. Hands pushing her into safety. Then darkness swallowed everything. I don't remember clearly, she admitted. Margaret's tone softened. That symbol belongs to a lineage erased from record. Aurora looked up sharply. Rowan said something similar. Margaret nodded. Then he is already searching for the same truth. A distant sound echoed through the castle. Metal footsteps. Rapid movement. Shouts. Margaret turned toward the door. That is not normal protocol. Aurora's pulse tightened. What is happening? Before Margaret could answer, the chamber door burst open. A guard entered, breath uneven. My queen, the inquiry has begun earlier than scheduled. Margaret's expression hardened. Without approval? The guard hesitated. Elder Rowan insists it is urgent. Silence. Then Margaret turned back to Aurora. They are accelerating this. Aurora stepped forward slightly. Why now? Margaret's gaze darkened. Because someone is afraid you will not survive until morning. Within the grand tribunal hall, nobles had already assembled. Candles lined the elevated chamber. Rows of witnesses waited in tense anticipation. Elder Rowan stood at the center once again. Vanessa sat among observers, calm and composed. Damon Blackwood entered last. The room quieted instantly. Aurora was escorted inside moments later. Chains were not used. Yet the weight of every stare felt heavier than iron. Rowan began immediately. This is a formal inquiry into identity fraud, archive intrusion, and potential treason. Aurora stopped at the center. Unmoving. Rowan's voice sharpened. State your full identity. Aurora Vale. A pause. That is not sufficient. Aurora met his gaze. That is all I have ever been told. Murmurs spread. Vanessa spoke next. Convenient memory loss. Aurora turned slightly. I don't recall speaking to you. A few nobles reacted. Rowan raised a hand. Silence returned. Damon remained still, observing everything without interruption. Rowan stepped closer. Then explain the pendant. Aurora's fingers instinctively moved toward her chest. It belongs to me. How? I don't know. That is not an answer. Aurora's frustration flickered. Neither is this interrogation. A sharp reaction spread through the hall. Rowan's expression tightened. Vanessa leaned forward. Such defiance suggests guilt. Aurora turned fully toward her. That suggests fear. The room shifted again. Damon finally moved. Slowly, he stepped between them. His presence cut the tension instantly. He looked at Aurora, then Rowan, then the gathered court. One final question, he said quietly. All attention focused. If you are who they claim you might be. A pause. Then why does every record point to someone who no longer exists? Silence deepened. Aurora opened her mouth, then stopped, because she realized something. She didn't have the answer. Not yet. But somewhere beneath confusion, something inside her was waking. And whatever it was not going to remain hidden much longer. The tribunal chamber held its breath. Even the torches seemed to burn quieter. Elder Rowan stood rigid at the center, waiting for Aurora's answer that never came. Damon Blackwood watched her closely now. Not as a ruler, not as a judge, but as someone searching for meaning in silence. Aurora Vale remained still. Yet something inside her was no longer still. A pressure had begun to build beneath her thoughts. Subtle at first, then sharper, like distant thunder trying to push its way through her mind. Rowan broke the silence. Speak. The command echoed across the hall. Aurora blinked once, then twice. Her fingers slowly tightened at her sides. And suddenly, a flash. Not memory. Fragment. Firelight dancing across stone walls. A woman's voice calling her name urgently. Run. A hand pushing her forward. Metal crashing behind her. Aurora gasped. Her knees nearly gave way. Damon stepped forward instinctively. Margaret rose slightly from her seat. Vanessa's eyes narrowed immediately. Rowan noticed everything. Something is happening, he muttered. Aurora inhaled sharply. Another fragment struck. A symbol carved into a burning door. The same crescent mark. The same fractured gold pattern. Her vision blurred. No, she whispered. Damon's gaze sharpened. What do you see? Aurora shook her head slightly, struggling. I don't know, it's not clear. Rowan moved closer. Then allow us to assist your memory. Margaret's voice cut in instantly. No. The chamber reacted. Rowan turned. My queen. I said no. Her authority silenced him. But Aurora was no longer fully present. Her breathing had changed. Uneven. Strained. Her hand pressed against her temple. Another fragment arrived. Stronger. A roaring sound. A collapsing structure. And then, a name. Not spoken. Not heard. Recognized. Ira. Aurora gasped loudly. The entire chamber reacted. Damon stepped closer. Aurora? But she didn't respond. Her eyes had gone distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Another memory broke through. A massive hall. Ancient banners. A gathering of cloaked figures kneeling before a throne made of dark stone. And a child, standing alone, watching everything burn. Aurora collapsed to one knee. Margaret moved forward instantly. She is destabilizing, a healer whispered. Rowan's eyes widened slightly. This confirms it, he said quietly. Vanessa leaned forward. Confirms what? Rowan did not answer her. His attention was fixed entirely on Aurora, because the crescent mark around her pendant had begun to glow faintly. Soft silver light pulsed beneath her skin. Damon saw it too. His expression changed. For the first time, uncertainty. Aurora lifted her head slowly. Her voice came out fractured. I remember. Silence fell. Every noble leaned forward. Even Vanessa stopped moving. Aurora's gaze focused ahead. I remember fire. A pause. Voices calling me something else. Another breath. Not veil. Her fingers trembled. Then, a final fragment shattered through everything. A woman's face. Same eyes. Same features. Whispering urgently. Daughter of the obsidian line. They must never find you. Aurora's breath caught, and she whispered the words without understanding them fully. Obsidian. The chamber erupted instantly. Gasps. Shouts. Stunned silence. Rowan stepped back slightly. Margaret closed her eyes briefly. Damon remained still. Processing. Vanessa rose sharply. No, she said immediately. That line was erased. Rowan turned toward her. Apparently not. Aurora looked up slowly. Confusion mixed with fear. What does that mean? No one answered quickly, because answering would change everything. Finally, Margaret spoke softly. It means you are not who you believed yourself to be. Aurora's voice broke slightly. Then who am I? Silence. Damon stepped forward. And for the first time since this began, his tone softened. We are still finding that answer. A distant rumble echoed outside the castle walls. Not thunder. Not the weather. Something approaching. The guards at the chamber doors shifted nervously. Then, a horn sounded from the outer gate. Long. Urgent. Warning. Rowan's face tightened. That signal means breach. Damon turned sharply. Where? A second horn answered. Closer. Inside the lower courtyard. Vanessa's expression changed instantly. That's impossible. Margaret stood fully now. No one enters this castle without my command. Another alarm followed. This one is even nearer. Aurora slowly rose to her feet. Still shaken. Still confused. But now I am aware of one undeniable truth. Whatever she had been, was now attracting something dangerous. Very dangerous. Damon looked at her once more, then gave a single command. Stay behind me. Aurora hesitated, but before she could respond, the chamber doors exploded open, and shadows poured inside. The tribunal chamber collapsed into chaos the moment the doors shattered. Black-cloaked figures surged inside, like living smoke. Steel flashed under the torchlight. Guards reacted instantly, drawing weapons and forming a defensive line. Screams followed. Then impact. Stone cracked beneath forceful strikes as the intruders pushed deeper into the hall. Damon Blackwood moved first. Fast. Precise. Deadly. In seconds, he was among them. Golden eyes sharpened, instincts taking control as he struck down the nearest attacker. 1, 2, 3. Bodies fell without hesitation. Margaret was pulled behind a reinforced barrier by palace guards. Rowan retreated quickly, issuing frantic commands. Vanessa froze for a fraction of a second, then moved towards safety without hesitation. Aurora remained at the center, unprotected, exposed. For a brief moment, everything around her slowed. The world narrowed into sound and motion. Metal clashing, voices shouting, footsteps pounding across marble. And then, a blade came toward her. Aurora reacted without thinking. Her hand lifted instinctively. Something inside her snapped awake. A pulse erupted outward. Not visible at first. Not physical. But undeniable. The attacker froze mid-step. His weapon halted inches from her. Confusion crossed his face. Then fear. Aurora's eyes widened. She didn't understand what she was doing. But something within her did. A second pulse followed. Stronger. The attacker was thrown backward violently, crashing into a pillar. Silence flickered for a heartbeat. Even Damon noticed. He turned sharply. "Aurora, don't move." But she wasn't listening. Her breathing had changed. Deeper. Heavier. Something ancient stirred beneath her skin, responding to threat like instinct given form. Another intruder rushed her. Aurora's hand trembled. "No," she whispered. But her body reacted alone. A wave of unseen force burst outward again. The attacker collapsed instantly, sliding across the floor unconscious. Shock rippled through both sides. Even the intruders hesitated now. Rowan, watching from behind cover, whispered, "It's awakening." Margaret's expression tightened. Vanessa, hidden near the edge of the chamber, stared with conflicted disbelief. Damon reached Aurora's side in seconds, cutting down another assailant mid-charge. He grabbed her arm firmly. "Control it," he ordered. Her eyes flickered toward him. "I'm not doing it." A lie. Not intentional, but incomplete. Because something was using her. Or becoming her. A third intruder raised a weapon. Damon intercepted instantly, but another attacker followed behind him. Aurora saw it too late. "No." The sound broke through the chamber. And then everything shifted. A surge unlike anything before erupted from her body. The air itself reacted. Light bent unnaturally. The entire hall trembled. All attackers were thrown back at once. Not struck. Not hit. Rejected. Damon turned sharply, shielding his face from the force. When it ended, silence returned. Heavy. Broken. The remaining intruders lay scattered across the chamber floor, either unconscious or retreating. No one spoke immediately. Even the guards hesitated to move. Aurora stood motionless in the center. Her hand was still raised. Her breathing is uneven. Confusion clouded her expression. "What was that?" she whispered. Damon stepped closer slowly. Not threatening. Careful. Measured. "You tell me," he said quietly. Aurora looked at her own hand. It trembled slightly. "I didn't choose it." Rowan's voice cut through the aftermath. "You didn't need to." All eyes turned toward him. He emerged from cover, expression pale, but focused. "She is responding," he continued. "To what?" Margaret asked sharply. Rowan hesitated, then answered. "To blood memory." A pause. "That is not learned power. It is inherited." Aurora stepped back slightly. "I don't understand." Rowan locked eyes with her. "You are not awakening abilities. You are remembering them." Damon looked at Aurora carefully. Something in his expression shifted. Concern. Recognition of danger. And something else he refused to name. Aurora's voice softened. "Then what am I?" Before anyone could answer, A distant sound echoed through the castle again. Not alarm. Not horn. This was different. A deep resonance. Coming from beneath the castle itself. The ground trembled faintly. Rowan stiffened instantly. That is impossible. Margaret's eyes narrowed. What is it? Rowan swallowed once. The sealed vault has been opened again. Damon turned sharply. Who opened it? Rowan's answer came slowly. No one living is supposed to have the key. A pause. Then, quietly. But someone just used it. Aurora felt it too. A strange pull beneath her skin. Like something underground was calling her. Recognizing her. Waiting for her. Damon grabbed his sword again. Evacuate the chamber. Margaret stepped forward. No. Her gaze hardened. If the vault is active. She looked at Aurora. Then she is already involved. Aurora's breath tightened. I don't even know what that means. Damon met her eyes. We are about to find out. From deep below the castle, a final seal cracked open, and something long buried began to rise. The castle tremor faded, but its meaning did not. Every corridor remained tense, as though the structure itself had begun to breathe differently. Below Blackwood Castle, ancient mechanisms shifted. Stone doors that had not moved in centuries slowly unlocked with a deep grinding sound. The sealed vault had awakened, and Aurora Vale stood at the threshold of something no living soul was meant to enter. Damon Blackwood led the descent. Sword drawn. Steps are precise. Behind him followed Margaret Blackwood, supported by 2 guards. Elder Rowan trailed at a distance, face drawn tight with unease. Vanessa had been ordered to remain above. She did not obey. She followed anyway. The stairwell stretched downward endlessly, carved into bedrock older than the kingdom itself. Torches flickered without wind. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became. Until finally, the passage opened into a vast underground chamber. Aurora stopped at the entrance. Her breath caught. The space was enormous. Walls carved with ancient symbols. Broken statues of forgotten rulers. Chains hanging from iron arches long corroded with time. At the center stood a circular platform. And beneath it, a glowing seal. Soft. Pulsing. Alive. Rowan's voice broke the silence. This place was erased from the record for a reason. Margaret stepped forward slowly. The Origin Vault, she whispered. Aurora turned slightly. Origin of what? No one answered immediately. Damon approached the platform cautiously. The moment his foot touched the stone, the seal reacted. A low resonance filled the chamber. Light expanded outward in ripples. Aurora flinched. Her body responded instinctively. A faint glow reappeared beneath her skin. The same crescent mark. Now unmistakable. Rowan stiffened. It recognizes her. Vanessa whispered from the shadows. No. Margaret looked between Aurora and the seal. Then the legend was not a myth. Aurora stepped forward without realizing it. Something pulled her closer. Not fear. Not curiosity. Recognition. Damon noticed instantly. Stop, he ordered. But she didn't. Her hand lifted slightly as she approached the glowing seal. The moment her fingers hovered above it, the entire chamber reacted violently. Light erupted upward. The stone trembled. Ancient inscriptions ignited along the walls, and a voice echoed through the vault. Not spoken aloud. Not physical. Inside the mind. Daughter of the broken crown. Aurora gasped sharply. Damon moved toward her immediately. Aurora. But she was no longer fully present. Her vision fractured. Images flooded her mind. A kingdom unlike this one. Wolves bowing before a black-lit throne. A woman identical to her standing among flames. And a child. Her. Standing before a fractured seal much like this one. The voice returned. You were not lost. You were hidden. Aurora dropped to her knees. Pain shot through her temples. "Stop," she whispered. But the vault responded louder. "You carry the last awakened line." Rowan stepped forward, shaken. "This confirms it." Margaret's expression darkened. "She is of obsidian descent." Vanessa reacted instantly. "That bloodline is extinct." Damon did not move his eyes from Aurora. Apparently not. The seal beneath them cracked slightly. A thin fracture spread outward. The voice deepened. "And now." The chamber went still. Even light seemed to pause. "Return what was taken." Aurora's breathing faltered. "What was taken?" she whispered. The seal flared violently. A shape began forming above it. Not solid. Not fully visible. A memory given form. A crown. Shattered. Burning. Then. A battlefield. A betrayal. And a woman falling as she handed something to a child. Aurora screamed softly, clutching her head. Damon reached her instantly, catching her before she collapsed. But the vision continued. The voice spoke one final line. "The throne remembers its heir." Silence dropped like a stone. The glow faded. The chamber returned to darkness. Aurora trembled in Damon's arms, breathing uneven. Rowan looked pale. Margaret said nothing. Vanessa stood frozen. Because everything they believed about extinction had just been destroyed. Damon slowly lifted Aurora to her feet. His voice was low. "Do you understand anything you saw?" Aurora shook her head slightly. "No." A pause. Then softer. "But it felt like me." That was the part no one could dismiss. Not even Damon. Above them, deep within the castle structure, another seal fractured silently. And somewhere beyond Blackwood borders, something ancient responded. The return from the vault was silent. Too silent. No one spoke as they ascended the long stone staircase. Even the castle above felt different now, as though the air itself had been altered by what lay beneath. Aurora Vale walked between Damon Blackwood and Queen Mother Margaret. Her steps unsteady. Not from injury. From internal disruption. Something inside her had changed. Irreversibly. The moment the vault's voice called her heir, a pressure settled beneath her skin that refused to fade. Now and then, faint silver light flickered beneath her wrist. Vanessa followed at a distance, expression tight, calculating, unsettled in ways she refused to admit. Elder Rowan walked ahead, silent for once. That silence was louder than any argument. They returned to the upper wing just as dawn approached. But sleep was impossible. Aurora was escorted to a secured chamber. Not a cell. Not a guest room. Something in between. 2 guards remained outside, but the door was not locked. Damon entered alone. He closed the door behind him. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension between them had shifted again. No longer an accusation. No longer curious. Something heavier. Expectation. Aurora stood near the window, staring at the pale horizon. "I saw too much," she said quietly. Damon stepped closer. "You saw enough." A pause. "That is different." She turned slightly. "I don't feel like myself anymore." His gaze remained steady. That is usually how change begins. Aurora frowned faintly. "I didn't ask for this." "I know." Another silence. Then Damon added, "But it asked for you." That sentence unsettled her more than anything before. Aurora looked down at her hand. The ring remained. But now it no longer felt like a symbol of protection. It felt like a marker. A signal. As if something had claimed her existence. Suddenly, a sharp pulse shot through her wrist. Aurora gasped, stumbling slightly. Damon reacted instantly, steadying her. "What is it?" "I don't know." Another pulse followed. Stronger. Her knees weakened. And then it happened. The mark appeared. Slowly at first. Then unmistakably. A crescent-shaped sigil formed beneath her skin, glowing faint silver gold, identical to the seal in the vault. Damon froze. Even he had not expected it to manifest so quickly. Aurora stared at her wrist in shock. "It's inside me." Her voice trembled. Damon's expression hardened slightly. "Stay still." Footsteps approached rapidly outside the chamber. Margaret entered without waiting. Her eyes immediately locked onto Aurora's arm. So did Rowan's when he followed. Vanessa arrived last. She saw it. And, for the first time, fear replaced her confidence. "That mark," Vanessa whispered. Rowan finished the thought. "The air seal." Aurora stepped back instinctively. "What does that mean?" Margaret's voice softened, but carried weight. "It means the vault did not choose randomly." Rowan nodded grimly. "It means the obsidian line did not end." Damon looked at Aurora. "This is confirmation," he said quietly. "Of what exactly?" she asked. Rowan answered. "That you are the last recognized bearer of a blood covenant tied to the Origin throne." Silence collapsed again. Aurora shook her head slightly. "I don't understand any of this." Vanessa finally spoke, voice strained. "If this is true, every kingdom beyond Blackwood will come for her." Rowan nodded once. "They already are." A horn sounded in the distance. "This one is different from before." Sustained. Layered. Not a warning. A declaration. Damon moved toward the window. Far beyond the castle walls, dark banners were visible on the horizon. Armies. Approaching. Margaret exhaled slowly. "So it begins." Aurora stepped forward, voice quiet but tense. "What begins?" Damon turned slightly. "The moment your existence stops belonging to you." Another pulse spread through her mark. This time, stronger. More controlled. As if responding to the approaching forces. As if acknowledging them. Rowan's expression darkened. "They have found her signal." Vanessa whispered. "This is war." Aurora looked at Damon. For the first time, fear and clarity mixed in her expression. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Damon's answer was immediate. "Survive." A pause. "And remember." Outside the walls, the armies advanced closer. Inside the castle, the air had awakened, and every power that once erased her name was now returning to finish what it started. The first strike came before sunrise. Not a warning shot. Not a negotiation. A declaration carved in steel and fire. The outer gates of Blackwood Castle shook under the impact of siege forces arriving without mercy. Horn calls shattered the morning air. Guard towers lit instantly. War had reached the kingdom's heart. Inside the inner halls, chaos spread quickly. Soldiers ran to stations. Elder Rowan issued commands with sharpened urgency. Margaret moved with controlled authority, refusing panic even as reports escalated. Vanessa remained near the upper balcony, watching the horizon with tight focus. And Damon Blackwood stood at the front line of the inner courtyard, sword already drawn. Aurora Vale stood behind him. Not hidden. Not shielded as before. Present. Exposed. Necessary. The crescent mark on her wrist pulsed faintly beneath her skin, reacting to every distant impact. She didn't understand it fully anymore. Only that it responded before she did. Another explosion struck the outer wall. Stone fragments rained down in the distance. Damon turned slightly. "Stay close." Aurora swallowed. "I don't think staying close will change anything." A pause. He glanced at her. "No." Then added, "But it keeps you alive." The gates finally collapsed. A wave of armored intruders surged forward. Not rogues. Not bandits. Organized warriors. Elite. Coordinated. The Blackwood guards met them immediately. Steel clashed against steel. The courtyard erupted into battle. Damon moved like precision incarnate. Each strike was deliberate. Each movement is lethal. Aurora watched for half a heartbeat too long. Then one enemy broke through the defensive line, heading directly toward her. Fast. Intentional. Damon was blocked. Too far. Aurora froze. Instinct flared. Not thought. Reaction. Her hand lifted slightly. The mark ignited. A pulse erupted outward. The attacker stopped mid-charge. The air thickened around him. Then he was thrown backward violently, crashing into a stone pillar that shattered on impact. Silence flickered briefly in that zone of chaos. Damon saw it. So did Rowan from the upper steps. Even Margaret, observing from the terrace above, stiffened. Vanessa whispered, "It's escalating." Another attacker rushed Aurora immediately. Damon cut down 2 enemies to reach her. But the distance was too wide. "Aurora, don't let it control you." Her breathing quickened. "I'm not controlling anything." But her wrist disagreed. The mark flared brighter. And this time, it answered without hesitation. A second wave spread outward. Stronger. More refined. The ground beneath the attacker fractured slightly before he was forced back by invisible pressure. Not thrown. Pressed. Pinned. Aurora's eyes widened. "I didn't aim that." Rowan's voice carried from above the stairs. "That is not random power. It's recognition." Damon reached her side finally, cutting down another intruder in one motion. "Focus," he said firmly. Aurora looked at him. "I don't know how." A brief pause. Then Damon made a decision. "Then follow my command." She hesitated. Another explosion echoed near the gate. Chaos intensified. "Trust me," he added. Something in his tone anchored her. Aurora nodded once. Damon turned toward the battlefield. "Protect the center line." Aurora blinked. "What?" "Do it." Another attacker broke through. Aurora lifted her hand instinctively. The mark responded instantly. This time, the force spread in a controlled arc. Not wild. Directional. It intercepted the attacker mid-charge, halting him completely before forcing him backward into a collapsing formation of his allies. Shock rippled across both sides. Rowan's eyes widened. "It's adapting." Margaret whispered. "No, she's learning." Vanessa's expression tightened further. "This is impossible." Damon glanced at Aurora again. Something had shifted in his gaze. Not fear. No doubt. Recognition. The battle continued around them, but now Aurora stood differently within it. Not a victim. Not target. But catalyst. Then, a horn sounded beyond the battlefield. Not Blackwood. Not enemy siege. A third signal. Distant. Foreign. Every warrior paused for a fraction of a second. Damon's expression darkened. That wasn't part of the report. Rowan stepped forward quickly. "Another faction is arriving." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Already?" Vanessa's voice dropped. "Then this is no longer a siege." She looked toward Aurora. "It's a hunt." Aurora felt it too. The pressure in the air changed again. Not attacking her directly. Locating her. Damon tightened his grip on his sword. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "stays behind me." Aurora looked at him. Then at the burning battlefield. Then at her wrist. The mark pulsed once more. Strong. Certain. And for the first time, it did not feel like fear. It felt like a response. Far beyond the gates, new banners appeared on the horizon, and the kingdom realized too late. Blackwood was no longer under siege. It was surrounded. The horizon burned with movement. Not one army. Not two. 3 distinct forces advanced toward Blackwood Castle from separate directions. Each carried its own banners. Each moved with calculated precision. And none came in peace. From the north, the Iron Fang Legion. From the east, the Silver Dominion. From the west, the Crimson Court. 3 kingdoms. 3 histories. 1 target. Inside the castle walls, silence fell over the battlefield. Even the wounded paused their retreat. Even the fighters lowered their weapons for a fraction of a second. Because the scale of what was arriving had changed everything. Damon Blackwood stood at the shattered gate. Sword lowered slightly, but never sheathed. His gaze remained locked on the horizon. Aurora Vale stood beside him. The crescent mark beneath her skin pulsed steadily now, no longer random bursts, but a constant rhythm. As if it had synchronized with the approaching forces. Margaret arrived at the upper battlement, eyes narrowing as she surveyed the 3 advancing fronts. Rowan followed closely behind her. Vanessa remained lower in the courtyard, expression unreadable, tension tightening her posture. "This is coordinated," Rowan said quietly. Margaret did not answer immediately. Then, "Yes." A single word, heavy with implication. Damon finally spoke. They were waiting for confirmation. Aurora turned slightly. Confirmation of what? No one answered her directly. Instead, Rowan stepped forward. "Your awakening." A pause. Each kingdom has its own interpretation of the obsidian bloodline. Vanessa cut in sharply. "Or what's left of it." Rowan ignored her. "But they all agree on one thing." His gaze shifted to Aurora. "You are the signal they have been searching for." Aurora's fingers tightened slightly. "I never asked for a signal." Damon glanced at her. "None of this is about asking." Another distant horn echoed across the valley. Then another. Then another. The 3 armies stopped simultaneously at strategic distance from the castle. Formations tightened. Weapons raised. Banners held high. Waiting. Watching. Then a rider emerged from the Iron Fang Legion, followed by another from the Silver Dominion. Then a third from the Crimson Court. They approached under white flags. Negotiation. But not peace. Damon stepped forward slightly. "Stay behind me," he said again. Aurora did not move. "This time," she replied quietly, "I think they came for me." Rowan's expression darkened. "That is the problem." Margaret descended 1 level closer. "If all 3 kingdoms want her." She paused. "Then Blackwood becomes the battlefield." Vanessa muttered. "It already is." The riders stopped just outside the broken gate. The Iron Fang emissary spoke first. "We demand the heir marked by the origin seal." Silence. The Silver Dominion followed. "She is property of ancient covenant law." The Crimson Court added last. "She belongs to the throne she was born from." Aurora stiffened. Each statement landed differently, but all pointed toward the same conclusion. Ownership. Damon stepped forward immediately. "No one here is property." The Iron Fang emissary tilted his head. "Then you will defend her claim?" Damon's answer was immediate. "Yes." A shift rippled through all 3 armies. Expectation sharpened into intent. The Silver Dominion emissary spoke again. "Then Blackwood chooses war." Damon did not hesitate. "You already chose it when you came armed." A long silence followed. Then, Aurora stepped forward. Every eye turned instantly. Damon reached slightly toward her. "Aurora, don't." But she did not stop. She walked to the broken gate line, stopping just behind Damon. The mark on her wrist began to glow brighter, visible now to all watching. Gasps spread through enemy ranks. The Iron Fang emissary narrowed his eyes. "It is confirmed." The Silver Dominion commander whispered. "The heir responds." The Crimson Court rider dismounted slowly. "You cannot protect her," he said. Aurora looked at him directly. "I didn't ask to be protected." A pause. "I asked to understand." The wind shifted, and for the first time, all 3 armies prepared to advance. Damon raised his sword. Margaret signaled the archers. Rowan activated defensive wards. Vanessa stepped back into formation, and Aurora lifted her hand. The mark flared. Not in panic, not in fear, but in command. The ground beneath the battlefield trembled. Light spread outward from her position in a controlled wave. Not attack, not defense. Declaration. Every army froze again. Even Damon glanced at her, surprised. Aurora whispered, "I don't belong to any of you." Silence. Then she added, "And I won't be taken." The seal in her wrist pulsed once more, stronger than before. And, for the first time, all three armies understood the same truth. The war was no longer about claiming her. It was about surviving what she was becoming. The battlefield did not move. Not forward. Not backward. It held its breath. Three armies stood frozen outside Blackwood Castle, their formations rigid, their leaders unsettled by what had just been witnessed. Aurora Vale stood at the broken gate, light still faintly fading from her wrist. The mark no longer pulsed randomly. It resonated, like something answering distant voices. Damon Blackwood remained beside her, sword lowered but ready. His stance had not changed. Only his awareness had deepened. Because what just happened was no longer local conflict. It had become a political rupture. High above the battlefield, Margaret Blackwood observed the silence with narrowed eyes. Then she spoke quietly. "They have decided." Rowan turned slightly. "Decided what?" Margaret's expression hardened. "To stop hiding it." A wind swept across the valley. Cold. Unnatural. Then, the sky above the three armies darkened. Not storm clouds. Something more precise. A structured formation in the air, as if reality itself had been arranged into a pattern. And within that distortion, figures appeared. Hovering. Arriving without travel. Not soldiers. Not emissaries. Crown overseers. Clad in layered ceremonial armor, etched with ancient sigils. One descended first. Then two more. Until 5 figures stood suspended above the battlefield. Every army below immediately lowered weapons. Even Iron Fang. Even Silver Dominion. Even Crimson Court. Damon's grip tightened slightly. Rowan whispered, "This is beyond sovereign jurisdiction." Vanessa stepped forward slowly. "I thought they were myths." Margaret did not respond. Because they were no longer myths. The central overseer spoke. Their voice carried without sound yet reached every ear. "Blackwood territory is hereby placed under Crown arbitration." A pause. Violation of containment protocol has been confirmed. Aurora frowned slightly. "Containment?" Damon looked at her briefly. "Meaning you were never meant to be found." The overseer continued. "The air-marked subject will be transferred under Crown custody." Instant reaction rippled through all forces. Damon stepped forward. "That is not happening." The overseer turned slightly toward him. "Alpha King Damon Blackwood." A pause. "Your authority does not extend to origin matters." Margaret's voice cut in sharply. "This is sovereign land." The overseer responded without hesitation. "Origin law supersedes sovereignty." Silence hit again. Rowan exhaled slowly. "So it is true." Vanessa looked toward him. "What is true?" Rowan answered quietly. "The obsidian heir is not bound to any kingdom." A pause. "She is bound to the crown itself." Aurora's expression tightened. "I am not bound to anything." The overseer finally turned fully toward her. Their gaze locked. For the first time, their tone shifted slightly. "Incorrect." A pause. "You are the result of containment failure." Aurora stepped forward half a step. "What does that even mean?" Damon moved closer instinctively. But the overseer raised his hand, and the air around him pressed downward. A silent force that stopped even movement. Except Aurora. She did not freeze. The mark on her wrist flared again. Resisting. responding, recognizing. The overseer noticed immediately. That reaction confirms stabilization progression. Rowan stiffened. Stabilization. Margaret's expression darkened. They are speaking like she is an experiment. A subtle silence followed. Then the overseer delivered the truth without emotion. The obsidian bloodline was not erased. A pause. It was sealed. Aurora's breath slowed. Sealed, inside what? The overseer's gaze remained fixed. Inside a living vessel. Silence collapsed instantly. Even Damon went still. Rowan's face lost color. Vanessa stepped back slightly. Margaret whispered, "No." Aurora's voice trembled slightly. "You are saying, I was never born." The overseer answered calmly. "You were constructed from inheritance fragments of a destroyed royal origin." A pause. "Your identity as Aurora Vale is a surface construct." The battlefield below erupted in confusion. 3 armies reacted differently. Some are in fear. Some in reverence. Some are aggressive. Damon finally spoke again. "That's enough." The overseer ignored him. "You are not protecting a woman." A pause. "You are guarding a sealed legacy." Aurora looked down at her wrist. The mark pulsed steadily now. Stronger than ever. As if agreeing. Or awakening further. Then something changed. The overseer's head tilted slightly. For the first time. A pause. The seal is reacting independently. All 5 overseers shifted position slightly. Warning. Aurora's breathing quickened. "I don't understand any of this." Damon stepped fully in front of her. "Then understand this," he said firmly. "No one takes you from here." The overseer replied simply, "That is not your decision to make." And then, the air split. The crown began its descent. The sky above Blackwood Castle fractured without warning. Not lightning. Not a storm. A controlled tear in the atmosphere itself. From it descended the crown overseers in perfect formation, hovering just above the battlefield like judges arriving at an execution already decided. All 3 armies below remained frozen. Even seasoned warriors who had survived countless campaigns now hesitated. Because what was unfolding no longer belonged to warfare. It belonged to the origin law. Damon Blackwood stepped forward again, placing himself between Aurora and the descending figures. His sword lifted, unyielding. Behind him, Aurora Vale stood still, but not calm. The mark on her wrist had stopped pulsing. It had stabilized into a steady glow, as if preparing for something inevitable. Margaret Blackwood watched from the upper terrace, face tight with restrained realization. Rowan whispered beneath his breath, "They've activated severance." Vanessa turned sharply. "What does that mean?" Rowan did not look at her. "It means they are no longer negotiating." The central overseer descended first. The air bent slightly beneath their presence. Their voices echoed across every mind at once. Containment failure confirmed. A pause. Subject Aurora Vale will undergo severance protocol. Aurora frowned. "What is severance?" Damon answered immediately, voice low. "Don't listen to them." But the overseer continued anyway. Severance is the extraction of inherited origin essence from unstable vessels. Silence hit the battlefield again. Even the armies outside the gate shifted uneasily. Aurora's breathing tightened. "Extraction from me?" Rowan stepped forward slightly from behind the line. "That procedure was outlawed centuries ago." The overseer replied without hesitation. "It was suspended, not removed." A subtle movement rippled through the hovering figures. Forming alignment. Preparation. Damon raised his sword fully. "No one is extracting anything from her." The overseer tilted their head. "Your resistance is irrelevant." A pause. "You are a protector of territory, not origin authority." The pressure in the air intensified. Invisible. Oppressive. Then, the severance seal activated beneath Aurora. Without command. Without warning. A circle of light expanded beneath her feet, locking her position in place. Aurora gasped. I can't move. Damon turned sharply. Aurora. The mark on her wrist flared violently for the first time since the vault. Not steady now. Reactive. Strained. As if something was trying to pull it outward. Rowan shouted. It's sinking with her core signature. Margaret's expression darkened completely. They're forcing alignment. Vanessa took a step back instinctively. This is insane. The overseer raised a hand, and the seal beneath Aurora tightened. Her body arched slightly in response. Pain flashed across her expression. Not physical injury. Internal displacement. Something inside her resisting separation. Damon moved instantly, striking forward. He reached the edge of the seal, and was thrown back by an unseen force. He landed hard but recovered quickly, eyes burning with fury. Stop this. The overseer did not acknowledge him. Instead, commencing extraction phase 1. The air around Aurora began to distort. Light peeled away from her skin in thin threads. Aurora screamed sharply. Not in fear. In shock. Because something inside her was being pulled outward. Like memories. Like identity. Like myself. Damon roared and charged again. This time, he broke through the outer pressure field long enough to grab her hand. Aurora, hold on. Her eyes met his. Confused. Anchored. I don't know how. His grip tightened. Then stay with me. A flicker of resistance formed around her mark. But the overseer reacted instantly. Interference detected. The seal intensified. Pressure increased. Aurora's vision blurred. Images returned violently. The vault. The throne. The burning kingdom. The woman called her daughter. And then, a truth buried deeper than memory. She was not only carrying power. She was carrying continuity. A surviving fragment of something designed to outlive extinction. Aurora gasped. I remember. Damon looked at her. What do you remember? Her voice trembled. I wasn't empty. A pause. I was holding something. The severance seal expanded again. Rowan shouted. If it completes extraction, she will collapse entirely. Margaret stepped forward urgently. Stop the procedure. The overseer responded calmly. Containment cannot be reversed. Vanessa whispered. She's going to die. But Aurora's mark suddenly changed. The steady glow fractured, then expanded outward. Not breaking. Responding. Damon felt it first through her hand. Aurora? Her eyes sharpened slightly, and for the first time since this began, the fear faded. Not because the danger disappeared, but because something inside her stopped resisting it. Her voice lowered. I'm not a vessel. A pause. I'm the seal itself. Silence dropped instantly. Even the overseers paused. That statement altered their calculations. Damon stared at her. Aurora? Her mark flared violently. But this time, it did not pull outward. It pushed back. The severance seal cracked slightly beneath her feet. Rowan's eyes widened. No, she's reversing it. Margaret whispered. She's awakening full integration. The overseer finally moved. Escalation detected. A pause. Protocol shift initiated. The air above the battlefield darkened further. Aurora lifted her hand slowly. The seal beneath her fractured again. Damon stepped back slightly, still holding her hand. Aurora, what are you doing? She looked at him, and for the first time, her voice was steady. Stopping them. The mark exploded outward in controlled light. The severance seal shattered completely. A shockwave erupted across the battlefield. All armies below stumbled. Even the crown overseers were forced to recalibrate mid-air. Silence followed. Then Aurora stood fully upright. No longer trembling. No longer uncertain. The glow beneath her wrist stabilized into a complete crescent sigil. Whole. Defined. Alive. The overseer spoke again. This outcome was not predicted. Aurora tilted her head slightly. Then update your prediction. Damon exhaled slowly beside her. Margaret closed her eyes, briefly in relief. Rowan looked stunned. Vanessa said nothing at all. The battlefield below had gone completely silent. Because every force present now understood one thing clearly. The severance protocol had failed. And whatever Aurora Vale had become was no longer under containment. As Damon opens a hidden vault beneath the palace, he discovers a portrait. The woman in the portrait looks exactly like Aurora.